Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels, and thank you to Cobra Garden and Mr Fothergills for their continued support. Today I'm going to be in the veg plot lifting the shallots, and we're going to look at some herbs in pots. Well, we're going to start in the veg garden this week and just catch up with a few jobs. I want to be working really on the onion bed, and things here are generally doing okay with it. The leeks that we planted about a month ago, these are doing fairly well. If you remember, we made a hole with a dibber and dropped the seedlings down into it, filled it with water, so they're getting going and they're now starting to make some nice new leaf on there. So all I want to do really with them is just to keep them growing and keep them weed free at the moment. We've had enough rain, the soil is nice and moist underneath, so just using my trusty hoe, it's just literally a case of carefully hoeing between them, making sure of course that we don't chop through that little leek stem, so just carefully. That just disturbs the surface, chops off any seedling weeds, and keeps them nice and weed free, so all the energy then goes into the leek. So that's something you should be doing on a nice dry day ideally, so that's something that we'll finish a bit later on. The onions as well are doing okay. They were fed about a week, 2 weeks ago, just with a bit of general fertilizer sprinkled on them, and they're starting to fill out nicely now. We're getting some nice onion growth down at the base there. But what we want to concentrate is on the shallots, and these were planted back in late March time, just as a single bulb, just one row here, and as you can see from that one bulb there, they've multiplied and we've probably got 8-10 bulbs per clump. They're what I use for pickling. I love pickled onions. I'm a real pickled onion fan. So I always grow a row of these, and then we'll pickle them in early autumn. So now's the time to lift them, anytime over the next few weeks. Traditionally, they always used to say you plant them on the shortest day of the year and lift on the longest, but not many people do that. But the time to lift them is when the leaves are starting to go over, and these are now, so they're not going to grow anymore, and I don't want them to because they'll be too big to get in the jar. So it's simply just a case of lifting them now. So I do that with a fork, just push the fork in underneath and just gently lift them up and then shake off the soil. And then what I like to do, I've got an old wire crate, but anything, something that lets the air go through it. It's just a case of shaking off as much of the soil as you can, and already these are now starting to split, and I just like to pull them apart individually from the clumps like that, because then they're going to dry and ripen. Because what I'm going to do with these is to leave them outside in the weather, as long as the weather is fine. If it's wet and cold, then I'll probably just lift them in under a shed or somewhere, and so that they're not going to get any wetter, because what I want them to do now is to really dry off. But as you can see from these are really lovely sized bulbs. If you get them too big, they're just too big to put in a jam jar to pickle. So these are going to be perfect. But what I want them to do is ripen now, so they get a lovely golden skin on the outside, go nice and firm, and the tops will die away, and then we can start thinking about what we do with them in another month or two's time. So I'm going to lift all of those and get them ready for pickling. So now the shallots are lifted, I've got a bit of spare ground in there, and I don't want that to go to waste. I want to put something in it. There's still plenty of time to sow lots of things, so I'm going to rake that down, and then I'm going to sow some spring onions. And spring onions in this lovely moist, warm soil will germinate quickly, soon make some growth, and we can enjoy those through the autumn and into early winter. The other thing I want to do is just have a look at the herbs that I grow in pots, because I grow most of my perennial herbs. These are the ones that come back year after year in pots, and that's really good to do them that way, because A, we can keep them near the house where they're handy to pick, but it means things like mint, which can be invasive in the garden, you can contain it. So I just arrange them on this stand, and they look decorative as well. This, by the way, is an olive tree. This is 20 years old. We've had this 20 years in a pot, and even in North Yorkshire it seems to do really well. It's in a sheltered spot, it flowers, and we do get fruits on it most years, but they never get bigger than about a pea and they never ripen. But I know certainly in the south of England people do get them to ripen, so they are much tougher than you think. But back to the herbs, all sorts of things you can grow. I love to grow rosemary. This is one of my favourites, and we use this a lot. This one is actually a ginger rosemary. It's got a really distinctive scent of ginger when you smell it, but it grows and looks just like the ordinary one. And then we grow, as I've mentioned, things like the mints in pots. There's lots of different types of mints that you can get: spearmint, peppermint, ginger mints, all different types. And then also things like the sages. This one is a variegated sage just here, which has got this really attractive leaf. And then we've got this one, the purple sage there with the darker foliage. And then we've got just the ordinary sage there, which again is really useful if you're doing barbecues and grilling food through the summer. Thymes are also good in pots, and these are great when they're in flower. This one is just starting to flower here, and the bees absolutely love thyme, and that's something again that we use quite a lot in cooking. So all different things that you can obviously grow in pots. One of the favourites is this one. This is lemon verbena. Now this one isn't hardy. I can't leave this out over the winter, but I know again in some parts of the country you can, and it will grow into quite a large shrub. So I prune it down every autumn, put it into the greenhouse, and then this is the new growth, and it's got a really strong lemon scented and flavoured leaf, and it's great. You can use it in cakes and puddings and drinks just to add that bit of flavour. So this time of the year we need to do a little bit of work on them, and this one here, this is a good example of something that you'd need to do. This is one of the oreganos. This is a lovely golden one, and when it grows in the spring you get this lovely mound of golden foliage, and again it's got that lovely aromatic leaf that you can use in all sorts of cooking and pizzas. But this time of the year it just flops, and it looks horrible, and we're not getting that new growth. So what you can do with it, and you can do this with other things like mint. This is a mint here that is now just starting to get just a little bit leggy. So what you could do is give them a haircut. So what you need are some shears or snippers, and what I'm going to do with this oregano is literally just give it a really hard haircut. Now it looks a bit drastic to do that. Don't waste what you cut off, because you could actually dry those, hang them up in little bunches like that and dry them, and then you can use them. It's just like being in Greece, isn't it, when you see them on the markets. So just give it a haircut all the way round. These snippers are perfect. I used these a few weeks ago, and a few people asked where I get them from, and these are actually Darlac snippers, and they're great for any light pruning, cutting flowers, taking cuttings. So you can get them from the Darlac website if you have a look. So it looks a little bit drastic, as you can see, but that is absolutely fine, because if we look down closely into there are lots of little buds already starting to grow, and they will grow with a bit of water, a bit of feed, and within a month's time it will be a lovely dome again of golden foliage. So any perennials, I could do the same with this one. This could be given a trim back. Don't worry about these types, but others that are woody, and if we get this one here, this is a sage. Now what we could do with the sage, I don't want to be cutting this back at this time of the year, because this one is more of a shrub, whereas these are herbaceous and they die back. But it's a great time to start thinking of taking cuttings. So rosemary, sage, really good. So all you do is snip off some of the new growth. So again, I can use my little snips for this. And to prepare the cuttings, it's really simple. I just get a little plant pot there and fill that with some compost. This is just an ordinary multi-purpose compost. I've got you can use a knife if you want, but these snips are perfect because they're so sharp. That's a little bit of stem, and we've got the leaf joint just there. So it's a lovely clean cut like that. And then using my finger and thumbnails, I can just remove leaves up the stem. And then if you feel that the top has got some bigger leaves on, you can just literally just snip a little bit of those off if you want to, just so it doesn't lose too much moisture. It's as simple as that. So if I just prepare 3 cuttings very quickly, and it really is quick to do it, I use the snippers on that one and then pinch those off. Doesn't matter how you do it. In fact, I'm going to cut that one a little bit shorter because you don't want them to be too large. And again, I'm just going to reduce that leaf. That just prevents moisture loss. We don't want them to wilt. and then we'll just do 3, and 3 is ideal for that small pot. Plastic pot, terracotta pot, fibre pot, it really doesn't matter. The cuttings don't care that much. Just trim that one again there. So there you can see I've got 3 short cuttings. You can use a rooting compound if you want, but they'll be absolutely fine. And then all I'm going to do is just dibber those in, 3 of those, carefully, little hole about 1 inch deep, just firm them in into my pot like that. Stick a label in if you're not sure what they are and you want to remember. And that is it, they're the cuttings. They'll be given a water, and then they can go on a cool windowsill, or you could put them in a little propagator out of direct sunlight. We don't want them to get too hot because they will wilt. And if we can keep those nice and turgid and cool and just misted over, they will root in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks time and start to grow, and then we can take them out the pot when they've got a good root system and pot them up, and we've got some nice new sage for next year in the garden. So you can do that with all the sages, the rosemary, even the tips out of your mints to create new plants. So give them a bit of care now, trim them back if they need it, take a few cuttings, and remember, keep them watered. And at this time of the year I like to give them a bit of feed of seaweed just to promote that lovely fresh growth so we can enjoy them for the rest of the summer. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and thank you for your likes and shares and for telling all your friends about it. Next time I'll be in the veg plot checking on the runner beans and also doing some seed sowing to make sure we've got some cut flowers for next year. We'll see you then. Bye.